Hi everyone, I'm Kirsten from IDERA, and I'd like to welcome you to today's Geek Sync titled Taking Your First Steps to the Cloud, Building a Hybrid Model. Our speaker today is Joey D'Antoni, Microsoft Data Platform MVP and Principal Consultant for Denny Cherry and Associates, here to discuss different deployment and migration options and what steps you should take to get started with your cloud journey. At this time, I will turn things over to Joey to get started. Joey, over to you.
Hi, Kirsten. Thanks. And today like Kirsten mentioned, we're going to talk about taking your first steps to the cloud or building a hybrid model. So this has been, obviously, with the pandemic and everything. Sorry to mention the pandemic. It's been a huge year for organizations moving to the cloud. A lot of that's because physical data centers are just harder to get to, and it accelerated a lot of movement, plus people working remotely. What we're going to talk a lot about in this webinar is building the right infrastructure to make a cloud migration. We'll talk a little bit about a bunch of infrastructure topics that I like to talk about, and we'll talk about some kind of SQL Server specific topics. The other thing I kind of want to mention is I've been writing a blog post series for IDERA that's on the community site called Cloud Day 2. I just posted the fourth of what are going to be 5 blog posts talking about maybe you've built a SQL Server VM in the cloud and you want to learn a little bit more about those next steps. And those posts are kind of all about next steps. So we talk about things like networking, disaster recovery, security. A lot of the stuff we're actually going to talk about in the webinar, but I covered in some more detail there. So you might want to take a look at that. So as Kirsten mentioned, I'm a principal consultant at Denny Cherry Associates Consulting. You can find me on Twitter at jdanton. If you want to email me a question, I'm joey@dcac.com as well. I'm a Microsoft Data Platform MVP, and I've been working with SQL Server for over 20 years, and I've been working with Azure now for over 10 years. So we've done a lot with the cloud with a lot of our customers. So when we talk about hybrid cloud, what do we mean? This is a kind of an overused term, but in all honesty, it's how almost all of my clients that are in the cloud that aren't startups have their cloud existing. It's some combination, and this is some combination of co-location data centers, their own on-premises data centers, services running in other clouds, software as a service solutions, combined with a big presence in a public cloud like Azure or Amazon. And since we're talking so much about SQL Server today, I'm going to talk mostly about Azure. And the demos I'm going to show you are going to be about Azure. But a lot of this stuff applies to if you're in Amazon or Google Cloud or any of the other cloud offerings. When I think of hybrid cloud, I think of some combination of on-premises resources. This can be your private cloud. When we say private cloud, that's a vastly used term. It can be your private cloud can be as complicated as something you bought, like Azure Stack or Azure Arc Services, that Microsoft's kind of recent do-it-yourself cloud offerings. That combined with the public cloud, or even that private cloud combined with just normal on-premises servers. It can be multi-cloud, so it can be Amazon and Azure and your co-location facility. I have a customer who has some resources in Amazon, some in Azure, and some in a co-lo facility. That's not a good way for me to recommend you getting started, because when you start going multi-cloud, things get really, really complicated really fast. I read a column last week for I read a column for Redmond Magazine, and I read about multi-cloud. It's really, really hard to do right. And their benefit, I'm not sure the benefits outweigh the challenges. Another example of hybrid cloud that could apply here is you could be fully on-prem, except you're using Office 365. And why do I highlight Office 365 there? One of the things we're going to talk about today, and in my opinion, one of the most important, is identity management. And if you're on Office 365, you inherently are using Azure Active Directory, whether you know it or not. And that means some things, especially if you later on move other resources into Azure from your data center. We also can mean Azure SQL Database and Azure VMs. In my opinion, this is kind of a hybrid model. It's not so much a hybrid of on-prem and cloud, but it's a hybrid between using platform as a service offerings like SQL Database, where you're not responsible for patching or backups, and using your own VMs, where you're fully responsible. You have to take your own backups. You have to patch SQL Server. You have to patch Windows. These are all kind of examples with hybrid cloud.